I'm just gonna start because this is the only thing I'm good at, making work. This is my studio wall. I have a small studio in Amsterdam. I usually sit there by myself. For the past 6 months, I have an assistant for a couple of days a week. And for the first 8 years of my graphic design practice, I've mainly been earning my living with making books. And mainly good at doing the inside typography. In the beginning, I always had trouble making the cover of the book, and I had been thinking about maybe hiring other people to do the covers. That kind of changed around in the years after. Here are some book covers, even with typefaces by people who sit here, probably. And the books became more outrageous, and at a certain point, I was only designing the book covers and skipping the whole interior design. Also I do smaller printed matter. This is what should I call it? Certificate for a prize for photography. And this is my smallest work, the stamps of Holland. They were in use for, I think, 7 years. And my biggest dream is to design money one day. And this is the closest I got. This is for a small festival in Holland. And this is a diploma. So this is some samples of stuff I do. The story begins. I don't remember how it exactly happened, but I got very much intrigued by making a background and a type be in one layer, and to make sure that they were legible and sometimes not legible. And since I didn't get the assignments I wanted, I started to offer myself to other people for free. This is a poster series I'm doing for a gallery in the north of Holland. They didn't dare to ask me, so I said, no, but I want to do this. They said, yeah, but we cannot afford you. And so this is my contribution to society in some way. This is a poster I do every 2 months, and we print it in edition of 60, and they are being posted in the north of Holland, and usually they're not there for more than 1 day because they get stolen quite quickly. And here, this is my platform for experimentation, and I usually work on a poster for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and I try to do a lot of experiments, and in the end there's a deadline, so I have to send it into to the printer. And my story kind of begins at my graduation, where before the computer was like this dictator machine that I could not make do what I had in my mind. And in 2003, I had a roommate who said, "Did you ever try this Wacom mouse pen?" And for me, that was the first time I could touch the computer with my hand. It was the first time we really got a connection. And what I did, I started testing the pen. I was not making a design or had any idea of what it should be or what it shouldn't be. This was a piece of text that I made into outlines, and I just started scratching the inside of the letter to see how the pen worked. And when I started looking at the different letters, I thought, hey, they kind of look like an A, but if you zoom in, they're all like individual characters. I thought that was very nice. And because I was drawing in vector, I could pile them up on top of each other. So left you see 50 different drawings, and right you see 100, up to 150 and 200. This, for me, was a moment where I thought, hey, this kind of conceptually it made sense to draw, and it was not, it was beyond the borders of making a light and a medium and a bold version. I could make a version of 200 letters or 12 letters, so for me this was something special. I never really used this type. I only showed it, and it was portrait. And I borrowed it to someone who said, I just want to make a test run with your letter and maybe I'll buy it. And then a year later, I found this image online, and I thought it said type design Hansje, and I would never call myself a type designer. And I was so in shock because it looked as if I had designed it, and it was not a new design with my typeface. So for me, this was a moment where I decided the type I make, I'm not going to share with other people, I'm going to use it. If you want to use my type, you have to hire me for it. So for me, this was a moment that I did not need to make type functional. As long as I knew how to use it, if it was in an Illustrator file or if I had to redraw it every time I use it, that was good enough. So for me, type and functionalities, as long as I can use it, it's good enough. As Ellen already told her in the introduction, so I was doing the book design, and in between the book design I would start to draw. Sometimes it was waiting for an email or waiting for a client to hand in the copy for the book. And I think the main reason why I started drawing type was because then at least I could use it at some point, because I had no inspiration to draw anything else. I'm not a good drawer, I just like the moment when a line appears on the screen. This is all digital drawing, but still it's manual drawing. This was a typeface, an alphabet I made, and at a certain point I was invited to do a project on an embroidery machine for a textile museum, and there I got the opportunity to test all the different drawings I had made. And in the end we made this typography for a bag, and because this lecture is about trial and error, this is one of the errors I made. They forgot to tell me that each 100 stitches cost €1, and they were going to sell this bag for €50 because it was the 50th anniversary of the museum, and this contained 70,000 stitches. So they stopped production after seven bags. So I have one bag, the designer of the bag has one, the museum has one, so I think there's 4 people who actually bought the bag. And we worked on this for 2 months or something, like up and down to the embroidery laboratory, and so that was kind of the boundaries. This is a project I started when I had no work, and I was invited to do a free poster for another gallery. And I thought, okay, I have no work, I'm going to make something that's really, really good. I remember thinking that, so I'm going to do my very best. And I had seen a book with bobbin lace letters, and I thought, oh, I'm going to do that as well. And instead of copying the book, I just closed the book and started drawing my own letters. This was the first time that I had the great idea to just use a fine liner. So for me, there was a whole new way of drawing that was much more organic. Before it was just more computer drawings. And because, of course, you're dealing with handwriting or like hand labor work, I decided that I should not only make one O, but make a lot of O's. And if you make something that costs a couple of hours to draw, that's a lot of work. I would scan in between, so if the drawing was not finished, so halfway I would scan to have more options. And this is a detail of a poster I made. This is a drawing I made, and I think for 3 or 4 projects I tried to incorporate it into a design proposal, and each time it gets rejected. So this is one of the ideas I still have laying around, so maybe one day I'll use it. And because trial and error is not only by things that go wrong, but also the way I try to investigate design. This is the design process of 5 days, I think 5 days non-stop designing. It's for the cover of a TV guide in Holland. And I kept track by making screenshots, and this is what happens if you give me an assignment. So what I do mainly is I try to make Illustrator crash. And combine all the tricks that are in there. And it's not about Illustrator tricks, it's also applying them in such a way that nobody can recognize what actually happened. And the thing is that I have to make notes myself on the recipe that I used. Because there's more than once that I have this, sometimes I have a sketch and I open the file 1 year after and I have no idea how I made it. And well, sometimes for a couple of months I try to recreate it and it doesn't work, so it's being a magician sometimes. You see towards the end the design steps get smaller, and also they asked me to design a pattern. So I flip between the pattern and the cover design. That's Illustrator crashing. The briefing of this project was actually quite nice. I had made one cover for them before. It was black and white. And they said, well, this time maybe use color. That was the only briefing they gave me. And towards the end, well, not there yet. And I think in the end they liked everything except the color. So, this is the final result. The frustration is that whatever I did here could have been a whole identity for something. And this is a TV guide that gets thrown away after a week. So that was kind of like a moment where it clicked in my head, like I could do something bigger with all this love and energy. Also because I used this once, I have trouble using it a second time for a different project. So, but what I like about this is that I try to find the edge between legibility and not legibility. So if something is too legible, for me it's not good enough because then it's boring. So for me it's very important to make a lot of prints in between and see if it works and on what distance it works. Of course, if you make a poster, then you have a lot more distance to play with if it's readable or not. And for something like this, the distance is a bit shorter. This is a type project I did also because I was asked to reinterpret a logo. This is a reinterpretation of an existing logo. And at that time I was working with an intern, and he was like sitting behind me, and he came up to my desk and said, oh, can you explain how you did it? And I explained him like the recipe on how I made it. And then he was quiet for 2 hours, and then he came back and he did this. That was also my reaction, wow. I posted it online, and a lot of people, it drew some attention. And then my intern left, and I started getting a lot of assignments to make animations or animated logos. And I thought, oh, I'll learn. I'll just say yes. And I accepted, I think, more than like a couple of assignments. And I had to give them all back because this was made in Notebox. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll learn After Effects. And for one project, I think for 4 weeks non-stop, I was like trying to learn After Effects with a course, and it didn't work out. I could not reach the level of magician that I have in Illustrator. So I had to give all the assignments back, which was kind of painful. This is a project I did in 2014 when I fell in love with my current boyfriend. His name is Willem, and I didn't know what I went to my studio and I had no idea what to do except of thinking of him. So I thought I'll make a gift for him, and he's still a bit pissed at me, I think, because the gift kind of grew, but it's more mine than it's his. So these are some variations of his, the W I made for him. Yes, well, then an assignment came in, and I thought, oh, I'll just work on this letter a bit more. The thing was, I would never ever start with a W if it wasn't for his name. And the trick I did with making this letter, it gave this nice harmonious letter. But if I would apply the same, keep working on letters following the same structure, this was the alphabet that came out. I never expected it, so you could call it an error. But I really, really liked it and applied it for like a book commission left and a TV guide. And then I think I took a holiday of 2 months, and these kind of emails came in. This was from Nike saying, hey, we like your W, can you make this W into our logo? And I did, like this. And they said, no, we don't like this irregularity. So I had to make it like this. And then I decided to also make a more regular version, which to me, I kind of like it, but I still really like this one. And I think now, yeah. Also, after seeing the image of the W, Lowlands Festival, which is the largest music festival in the Netherlands, they came to my studio and they said, Hansje, we want you to do the identity for Lowlands. It's a commercial festival, 55,000 people visited. It's 3 days, but they're super independent, and the director is the only one who decides if it's good or not. So you're not in this pyramid of decision makers. And he was staring at the wall I showed in the first image, and he said, well, each year we can just throw an arrow, and that will be the identity for the festival. And that kind of appealed to me, because it didn't sound as if I was going to be stuck in an identity. And he also liked the W a lot. And what happened is I met Just at a book party somewhere, and he said, do you know that we could do a lot of stuff with your letters? So I invited him to work with me, and he did a lot of stuff with my letters. So he industrialized the method. Because I should explain that this is all hand. Well, not hand, but I do it in Illustrator, and then I do Pathfinder, and there's a lot of connections I have to make, so one letter costs a couple of hours to make, and now we have a script made in Drawbot that, yes, for Drawbot. And now we have a script that, thanks to the power of scripting, we can just make a lot of variations just by running it. And for me, that's such a powerful new way of thinking. For me, it's very frustrating that I cannot do it. Like, I can run it and I can change the parameters, but I don't know the back office of it. But it's very powerful to have something that makes stuff work. We can, as you saw before, we can also animate it. And we can also put in feeded vector images and make the vector animate. What I thought from working for a festival, festivals you can do stuff that you can make things be very big. And it turns out that working for a festival you mainly design for Instagram and Facebook. And if you think of something which is like with a high definition, like my canvas is usually 320 pixels, and I thought festival, big meters. So there's a lot of trouble I have with the identity, but I still love it. So, and because the client is not strict, but they just let me do the trial and error. It's great because if I find out that something is wrong, I'll just make it different next time. And as long as it kind of connects to each other, it's good enough for them. So I really feel that we do have the freedom to work on it. At a certain point, I ask just like, hey, can we do some tiling? And so these are animated tiles. So we can also make patterns. I didn't talk about patterns, but that's a big part of my daily life, to make patterns. And in the end, we managed to make, or not in the end, quite in the beginning, but we managed to make a standalone font, which is also just straight out of Drawbot. And that is the thing that we use most in the end. So that's kind of a disappointment, but very happy that we found our own tools. Since I only have 5 minutes left, these are this is sketches for a fence I was commissioned to do. This is the final type treatment I made for the fence, and it kind of refers to balusters. And we laser cut the baluster and make into a relief. I don't know the English word, like a three-dimensional thing. And this is, I've written somewhere how long it is, but it's a whole entire street, and it depicts a poem about the street, about the living area before the Second World War, because it was a Jewish area. And what I like about this is, from up close, it's ornaments, and from afar, you can read it. So I like the fact that the text is not in your face all the time, but you can discover it. And also, it gets kind of three-dimensional when you see it from the side. Oh yeah, it's 1,100 foot long. In the same period, I had a commission to do another fence, which was a bit higher and a bit less wide. These are also the pre-sketches. And for me, the sketches are the most valuable because that's the thing I can continue with at some other point. And in the, after like, researching and making trials and error for 1 year, I think, we found out that doing perforation design was the best. And this is the final design. It's at the airport in Amsterdam, Schiphol. And that's the place here. This is the place where people sit and see trucks and cargo go through a scanning machine. And I thought it was nice to make like type that is not so legible, that you can discover that there's actually something legible in it. But in the end, the client says he's not very satisfied with it. But I like it. And this is the bridge to the exhibition that opened the day before yesterday. It's a reaction to a main exhibition that shows 100 years of modernists. And they asked me to kind of show the sound of today, or at least my today. And since I do a lot of patterns, here you see the prototype for the fence I just showed. And here's the prototype for the lower fence. But I made an exhibition, it's called Hansje van Halem in patterns. And these patterns are usually from end papers for books. And we made them into wallpapers and made a big installation. And it's like all these little rooms in this exhibition space where you see my sketches, my failures. So if I walk around, I can say, oh, this one never happened, and this one was rejected by a client, and this one is interesting, I'm going to use it for a next project. But I still like printed matter the most. And left you see the wallpaper, and right you see the printed pages for the publication that we made in cooperation with the publisher. He kept track of all the end paper, well, how do you call it, print plates. He kept all the print plates, and he just started printing my book before I even knew that I was going to make a book. And in the end, we made a publication of 60 pages, printed in 28 Pantone colors. And here are some spreads. It's offset, digital print, reso print, and foil print. And it also has a lot of type sketches. And in a way, because here I just share unused material, which is kind of scary, but also by putting them into a publication, I kind of claim them and show them, like, these are mine, I'm going to use them someday. So there's a date on it, so it's also my way of claiming stuff. And to make some, I didn't bring copies for the book market, but you can order them online via shophansje.net, and it's free shipping worldwide. So that was my commercial moment. And that was the end of my lecture.